Good evening. Tonight we will be discussing neurodivergence and hyperfixation. This is news to me. Of course, it's news to you. Lena, it's always news to you. This is the way your buddy John operates. My buddy. Your buddy, my buddy. Okay. What are we talking here? All right. You started to notice on Twitter, especially, right? Twitter is a little bit, it's an oddball platform that we don't go on a lot, but I'm starting to notice these young people today. Yeah, young people today, they make me a little nervous, right? Like, this is me and John when we were like 20. I was not quite 20. John was around 20, right? Something like that. You were very young there. You were like 16, maybe. 16, if you were a day. All right. That's me at 16? Yeah. All right. You remember better than I do. Yeah. We were both, and it's funny, they're both those taken in those booths, those old time photo booths. Right. Let's get this over here a little bit more so we can see that. So we were both neurodivergent. Me and you, yes. But undiagnosed, because they didn't diagnose it in those days. We were both neurodivergent, and we were both hyperfixated on rock and roll and creative pursuits, but really hyperfixated. Right, which is why we became who we became. Yes, okay. But I'm noticing that these young people, and I never knew what the names were for these things. John tells me, and it makes sense, that we were both had on the spectrum for autism, or some very highly functioning on the spectrum for autism. It makes sense to me because I always felt like I was kind of out of the loop with so-called normal society, and so did John. Yes. And we both tend to have like these obsessive compulsive tendencies too. Yeah. Which is, it can be part of the spectrum. But it seems like, these kids today are embracing these labels. Correct me if I'm wrong. Somebody. John? No. They identify themselves by their specialness of these labels, but many of them, they're incorrectly diagnosed. All right. First of all, John was saying that they're hyper, what do we call it? Obsessive, whatever that behavior is. You don't remember the phrase already. I hyper connected. I don't know. All they do is talk about the Beatles, but not only do they just talk about the Beatles all day, and these kids are like 15 to 20, between the ages of like 15 and 20 from what I could see. And there's tons of them out there. They talk about the Beatles all day, but they don't really talk about their music. They talk about the Beatles' sexuality and the fact that the Beatles are bisexual, I don't know, having sex with each other, especially John and Paul. But lately I've been seeing they're trying to tie really all of them together in some way. First of all, everyone can be whatever sexual orientation they want to be. It's their own business. But the Beatles were straight males. Yes, that's correct. And nobody was wanting to be a tranny, and nobody was wanting to have sex with each other. But these kids today talk about it like it's a fact. And not only do they talk about it like it is a fact of the Beatles folklore, but they talk about it all day long. Like, these kids seem to be on the internet talking about it all day long. And I mean, every time I happen to browse and I see something on there, it goes on and on and on. Yeah. That is what you call right, hyperfixation. Yes. This is a hyperfixation, intense and prolonged focus on specific interests, losing track of everything else and neglecting responsibilities. It certainly seems like that is like what takes up most of their time talking about this bullshit about the Beatles, right? And neurodivergent people are those who neurological development and functioning differ from what is typically considered normal. And it's like, I guess it's like it's people on the spectrum of autistic. But now see, I was trained back in the 80s to work with autistic children. It was a new thing, and the reason I went for the training was because one of my neighbor's child was diagnosed and she was severely autistic. So I know a lot about autistic children. I've worked with them, severely autistic children. You know, the kind of autistic children that like spin in a circle and stare at the wall, autistic. These kids who are on the internet talking about the Beatles being asexual, pansexual, bisexual, quadruple sexual, whatever they want to talk about, they don't seem autistic to me, but they all scream about being autistic, and they seem like they all embrace it and even like go so far as to be like, I'm more autistic than you, or it's all they talk about is like their identity as being neurodivergent. And John, what did you wanted to say something about that? This is what happened to that generation after being raised on computer activity practically 24/7 and not having a chance to really develop normally. Really, yes. And without going any further into it, I'd like to discuss this further with Shanti Veda and see if she has any therapeutic or professional opinion about any of these theories that I have just provided. Okay, so that's it. Yeah. All right. This is all work today? This is all work. It's just past midnight. It is November 7th. It is the second night of the full moon, between the second and third night of the full moon. And it is a number 9 day. And we'll be back later, bringing you more on hyperfixation and neurodivergence.